This podcast is part of the Spoon Podcast Network, home of smart conversations that feed your mind.
Well, I'm Carolyn O'Neill. I am a registered dietitian, and I'm a journalist who writes about food, nutrition, and cuisine, and have so for many, many decades. So just a fun fact, one of my favorite topics in the world is the history of food technology. So as we move forward into the future, it's always fun to see where we've come from, how did that work out, and how can we improve upon it? Well, the title of this panel, GLP-1s, fiber, microbiome, and the food future, certainly is an incredible landscape of many big topics that we are struck with today. Now, the food future, there we go, that's out there. GLP-1s, certainly something that is, Noosheen hopefully will come back in a moment. Must have hit a button. We'll wait for her to come back. But I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists. And they are a fiber-friendly and a future-focused panel, that's for sure. First of all, next to me, Kristofer Cook, who, by the way, everybody, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Kristofer is in Sweden. He is the CEO of Carbiotix.
Yeah,
and this is a company that's doing on-site upcycling, something called NutriCycle, and it's helping food producers capture what were agricultural byproducts, perhaps sent to animal feedlots, but instead making their way to healthful innovations to add fiber-rich ingredients for human food. And we'll get you to describe it in your own words in a moment. Next panelist is Matt, and Matt Barnard is the CEO of One.Bio, and their tagline, which is a beautiful one, is "We make food whole." Matt taught me a lot about the, welcome back, Noosheen. I'm just introducing the panel and you'll be next. I'm just introducing Matt here. You taught me a lot and really brought it to the forefront, Matt, about the fibers, and I call it now the fiber-verse, if you will. There's not just one fiber or two fibers. And your company is making, proprietary ingredients, whole fibers that are added to foods, and an improvement over what we've had before that may be a little gloppy, maybe a little gritty, and something that's going to end up being much better for taste and mouthfeel, and of course for good nutrition, because you care about the fibers that you're choosing to put into your proprietary mix. We'll hear a little bit more about that. And our third panelist, Noosheen Hashemi, who is the CEO and founder of January AI. And this is all about personalized nutrition coaching, and I said AI, so using AI to track nutrition for optimal health all around and to support. Today, we're going to talk about the microbiome-friendly diet and how AI can help us not just track dietary fiber and make sure we hit that number, but maybe working on the quality and the diversity of the dietary fibers in our diet. So, Chris, let's get back to you. And how does what you're doing at Carbiotix really intersect with the title of this panel today?
I think the best way to make that connection is to explain what we're doing first and foremost. And the best way of describing our company is to say that we're probably a process engineering, food science, and microbiome company. That's the best summary of what we're doing. And what we do is we assist food and beverage CPG companies with accessing what we call low-cost, high-quality soluble fibers / prebiotics, proteins, antioxidants, and even monosugars. And we do that by deriving it from the hemicellulose side stream, which is typically a product, as you mentioned, is sent to animal feed, with the goal of producing healthier, more sustainable, and hopefully more profitable processed foods. So our focus is on the processed food side. And by making that decision of going from, I guess, nutraceuticals, functional food to the processed market, we're sort of trying to create the preconditions that will allow F&B CPG companies to fortify their foods, much like Pepsi has done quite recently with the recent launch and acquisition. I would say those products are sort of on the borderline of being functional foods, but I think you see a natural progression from going from nutraceutical to functional food to sort of mass implementation on a variant of an existing processed food. And obviously, it's our opinion that obviously fibers have an important role to play in improving gut health. And in connection with this particular topic, we know that obviously, fibers induce the natural secretion of the GLP-1. So that is one of the reasons we're doing this. But fundamentally, we know there's a significant fiber deficit. So if we can get fibers into processed foods, that becomes one extra channel to market. Is it passive? I wouldn't say so initially, because companies will adopt a variant of an existing product, and therefore they'll communicate on the product that it's reinforced with fiber or protein or something else.
Can you give us an example of something? Because on the website, by the way, folks, of the Carbiotix website, there's a great little animated video, if you will, kind of showing the process. What is an example, let's say, of something that you have come up with the on-site upcycling that's improved a food category or food product?
Yeah, I would say the plant-based non-dairy alternatives have received a lot of criticism recently about the health profile of these products. And for example, one of our customers is obviously one of these companies working with an oat-based milk product, and their side stream is essentially a hemicellulose that's sent to animal feed or used as a food ingredient, a very basic food ingredient today. And what we do is we break that down, so we solubilize it into soluble fibers, proteins, if there's antioxidants in the profile, monosugars that could potentially not replace added sugars, but at least we derive them from the natural or the original raw material. And that's a classic example of taking a product which has been criticized for not necessarily being healthy and then reinforcing it with the fiber to get the product up to either a good source of fiber or a high fiber source, which is about 6 grams per 100, according to EFSA, at least in Europe, for maybe 10 cents. So that's the advantage, again, doing this on site. You can significantly get the cost down. And in that particular case, they can use the extract, which we're producing on site, and reinforce their product and fortify their product directly. And that's the advantage of doing the upcycling on site.
So you're adding fiber back to where it was before or where it never was?
Well, put it this way. The dairy industry has been working with the concept of deconstruction, reconstruction for 70 plus years. All we're doing is taking the hemicellulose fraction, which is typically a side product of any plant processing process, where you're focusing on starch, lipid, or protein extraction. And all we're doing is extracting the soluble fiber components and then reconstituting them to the core product, and then elevating obviously the dietary fiber content of that particular product to either a good or a high level. Now, at the same time, we're also getting soluble proteins from that hemicellulose fraction, antioxidants depending upon the side stream product, and even monos, where we can displace the need, for example, for added sugars if it's glucose, for example, where we utilize the arabinose or the maltose, or the naturally derived glucose from the hemicellulose fraction.
Well, we're going to get back to that, because I think we're sort of setting a scene here of how do we balance, how is it labeled for the consumer versus how is it the recipe essentially come together for food production. So Matt, turning to you at One.Bio, tell us about how your process is perhaps a little different.
Yeah, so the problem we're pointed at is modern chronic inflammatory disease. And so this is metabolic dysregulation, it's metabolic disease, cardiovascular, neurodegenerative, autoimmunity, cancers. So most of what's in those buckets has to do with what we are and are not putting in our bodies. So that has to do with fiber, which we're not. So the severe fiber deficiency of the modern diet is fiber. You know, in nature, you rarely, other than like honey, do you see a sugar to fiber ratio of less than 4 to 1, or sorry, of greater than 4 to 1. It's almost always less than 4 to 1. And even beyond that, it's usually below 2 to 1. In the grocery store, it's infinity, right? And so where we have these semaglutides and the GLP-1 drugs is the name of this session. Those are necessary because of the severe fiber deficiency. Kristofer nailed it when he talked about the fact that fiber is how the GLP-1 hormonal mechanism evolved to work, with the triggered by the fermentation of fiber, not through drugs. And so those drugs are only necessary because we have this severe fiber deficiency. So what we at One.Bio have worked to do is to create a process that can bring any plant fiber into any food or beverage matrix without impacting the user experience. Because when you walk into the grocery store, again, it's not about sloth and gluttony, it's about fiber deficiency. The options there just aren't great today. You've got an infinity ratio of sugar to fiber rather than less than 4:1. And so the thing that regulates our metabolism, the thing that makes energy, sugars, safe to metabolize is in fact fiber, because it's hitting that GLP-1 hormonal mechanism. And so we make it possible to, like I said, whether it's your glass of water with a full day of fiber in it that you can't perceive its presence, or whether it's your coffee with half of your daily intake in there. This is extremely high dose, uniquely high dose, imperceptible to the consumer, anti-inflammatory, and again, from just about any plant around.
Back to the history of sort of nutrition and food, I know that as a dietitian studying, the nutrition support of patients with diabetes was always fiber. Fiber also playing a role, as you mentioned, in regulating blood sugar, insulin, digestion. We've identified now that this GLP-1 or the glucagon-like peptide might be that MVP, if you will, of that system. I have one more question about fiber. And
Carolyn, you can ask me as many questions about fiber as you want.
Oh, good. I'm like, then we'll get into legumes and beans and the leguminate, we can get into all that kind of stuff. But again, just to reiterate, when we were learning about fibers, you had two buckets essentially: soluble, insoluble. Insoluble were the kind from oats and fruits and beans, really help with cholesterol management. And insoluble, the kind that you just didn't digest, more like nature's broom, like the fibers you actually see in a celery stalk, and that just helps with your, digestion and constipation and keeping everything moving. So Matt, tell us a little bit more. And again, anybody on the Noosheen, I'll get you in a sec, but just about, there's more than two kinds, especially when we talk about prebiotics, probiotics.
And I would say even the soluble, insoluble, that has existed for a half century or longer. No one's actually ever proven that is in fact the mechanism that is observed, that is producing the outcomes observed, but it's just a thing that's been known. But what the team at One.Bio has done is broken a lot of ground, pioneering ground, where we have mapped chemical structure after chemical structure, fiber after fiber. These are big, complex polymers of tens of thousands of sugars chemically bonded together. And until One.Bio did its work, there wasn't a map of what are the structures of fibers in nature. So we have begun making that map. We've mapped over 4,000 fibers in the natural world so far, and then grouped them into families in a phytoglycomic tree. And you can start to see how structure drives function when you start to map these things. So it's fiber isn't fiber, it's in fact fibers. Just like 100 years ago, people didn't know that there were different vitamins and minerals that drove different function in the body. That ground is now being broken relative to fibers via the microbiome and how that modulates function in the body.
Okay, folks, you may be up on your amino acids with all your protein excitement, but it sounds like you've got some more work to do in the fiber world, which turns me to Noosheen. And Noosheen, you've really tell us a little bit about January AI and about the service essentially you provide in the absolute incredible universe of nutrition information that you pull together for people. How does it work?
So we have our claim to fame is our glucose predictions, which we can do without or with CGMs, but we have evolved and have developed a very full nutritional intelligence platform. And as part of that platform, we have an AI nutritionist that you can do a consult with, and you can, for example, say, hey, I would like to have 25 grams of fiber a day. and the nutritionist will look at your food logs and then be able to recommend things that you are used to eating or things that are adjacent to what you're eating, and can be very specific about where to get them, and can give you recipes, can give you grocery ideas, restaurant meals to ask for, etc. We also have a food scanner, which is the world's best food scanner. We beat all LLMs. We beat anyone who's out there. So there's a challenge issued. If anyone can find a better food scanner than January AI, I'll give them $1,000.
And when you say scanner, can you explain what that is, or folks might not know?
You take a picture of your food, and it will tell you, it will break it down into its macros. And so you will get the amount of fiber in it. And then it will also allow you, it gives you a predictive blood glucose curve as well. But more importantly, it will let you come up with ways of hacking that food. So you can modify quantities. You can say, what if I eat half of it? What if I, so you can essentially hack ingredients of the food to understand what happens to the macros when you do that, and what happens to the fiber composition when you do that. You can also go to the grocery store and just scan any food and understand. Of course, things normally have fiber on the label, but I think if you wanted to know kind of, you wanted that to be part of your personalized nutrition at January, you could do that. And then we have, essentially, we have very successfully, and we have 2 published papers in NPJ Digital Medicine, where we have gotten people to eat more protein and more fiber, and to consume fewer calories and fewer bad carbs, if you will. And amazingly, if you increase fiber and protein in your diet and you reduce the other macros, amazingly, you are satiated. This is well established in literature that Matt was talking about. And you lose weight because you feel full, you feel more full, you don't feel as hungry, you're not snacking as much, and you can actually drop weight because a lot of those, empty calories are not there. So this isn't really very complicated. It's really simple, and you can easily set goals with Jan, the AI nutritionist, around fiber if you wanted to do that. And it will point you to the right sources. And it's been very successful getting people to increase their fiber, because a lot of times people don't know I've heard people tell me, I eat a lot of fiber. I go, okay, what are you eating? I eat so much lettuce. Like, I have salad for lunch, I have salad for dinner, and then I have to, I try not to chuckle, but people also tell me, of course, they're having a very, very healthy breakfast, people with diabetes, and it's fresh squeezed orange juice. So there's a lot of misunderstandings around nutrition in general. So I think it's really nice to have a companion 24/7 that's kind of there for you. You can set goals, it can help you track goals, and then it can inform you about really what something is and what its nature is.
I do love it. It's kind of like, I think we all could not live without GPS anymore. The old road map used to open up in the car and like practically crash the car. A lot of you probably don't know that we did that. Open up the map, block the windshield, but now we've got GPS. So this is kind of like a GPS for guiding you personally to the destination you want to arrive at. I want to ask you something, because again, there is so much research about the value and the power of, and maybe not for everybody, of self-monitoring. Is this what you think is part of the secret, the self-monitoring?
Absolutely. I mean, no one is with you 24/7. You're the only one that can really be the captain of that wellness ship. I mean, you can have the best doctors, you can have even the best AI, right, can give you ideas, but without you, the best the thing with AI is that they're there all the time. You can go back and forth. No other companion can be with you 24/7. But at the end of the day, it's you and your willpower. But in terms of I think that for me personally, AI has had a foundational difference in my life, not just in managing my glucose, which I've done very well. Most people are shocked when they find out I'm 62 years old. They literally just can't believe it. So they ask me about my skin. They ask me what I do with my skin.
Hey, I just turned 70. So,
Yeah. Bravo.
Hold my beer. Hold my beer.
So it's amazing. If you don't eat a lot of inflammatory foods and you have an amazing gut, you might have amazing skin. So how did I do it? AI has helped me certainly manage my blood sugar. I learned that a few years ago, developing January, creating January. But fiber, I've been taking fiber religiously for at least 7 years daily. And I recommend it to everyone. I don't get sick. I mean, I can talk all day about benefits of fiber.
And you know, to move on to like the self-monitoring thing, and again, in one of our last sessions, as Mike brings up here, food choice architecture, and Chris, this gets back to you of like essentially the foods that people are reaching for and or beverages that just happen to be the ones that do have the nutrients like fiber that we need more of. You're just making those choices. It's kind of like meeting people where they're at. And any of you, and then we're going to get into the fiber and the soda thing, Matt, and I'm saving that one, but you could talk about it too, Chris. But we can change choice architecture by literally building favorite foods that are now better for us. Is that right, Chris? Would you like to talk about that?
I think from our position, we're very food agnostic because it's our ambition that if we can get the price down enough and we can make the products interesting enough in terms of these extracts, then we can make them compatible with as many different processed foods. And therefore, what will happen is that, the nutritional label will say higher dietary fiber. And if we extract the protein fractions, that will go up. And maybe the antioxidants are not as transparent. But if it's a soda or if it's a hamburger or if it's, we are hitting, our long-term ambition is to get fiber into people without people changing their behavior. This is our goal. Now, it's the conscious use of fiber, the identification that, this product contains fiber and I'll take it because of that. And again, I'm very open to the utilization of fresh foods and nutraceuticals and functional foods. But our mission is to create the preconditions where people or consumers don't fundamentally have to change their behavior and don't even know that they're consuming fiber in the product. So if we get the price down enough, then it's a discussion, can an F&B CPG company reinforce a product with a soluble fiber where the price doesn't need to be modified at all? Can they absorb that price? These are the questions that we're asking. If we increase, for example, the COGS by 5%, can the manufacturer absorb that? Can they pass that on initially as a variant of a cash cow product where they promote it's high in fiber, but you create a trajectory where all products get reinforced by fiber? So it becomes something that's adopted on the masses, so to speak. That's the vision. That's where we want to head towards. I fully acknowledge that, as I said earlier, you go from the nutraceutical to the functional food, to the variant of the processed food product, and then the mass adoption. That's what happens because you have to get economies of scale in place, and you have to ride that cost curve, and you have to get to that stage of S curve growth as well to justify that. So that's my position. I'm totally agnostic. It's great that Pepsi, for example, has launched this product. I know there are different opinions, certainly, on whether they should have done this. But I think at the end of the day, it's an example of fiber getting into a variant of a mass market product. And the same thing happened with probiotics. They went from the pharma nutraceutical applications into the functional foods and then on variants of different foods. And now they're used on a mass basis within different processed foods. So the same thing is happening now with prebiotics. And as we discussed here, it is the prebiotics or the soluble fibers that are fundamentally deficient in people's diets. So at least we're hitting something that is deficient in our diets today. How we get it into ourselves, I hope that we can get the cost down to a level where we get mass adoption across, processed foods. And Matt is contributing to that. And obviously the Noosheen is contributing to that in terms of allowing people to identify the relevance and, to customize diets for the individuals. Everything contributes to introducing more fiber into people's diets. And the channel, it doesn't really matter how you do it. If you can afford fresh foods and nutraceuticals and functional foods, you do it that way. Our vision is passive consumption through responsibility of the manufacturers to fortify their foods. That's what we want.
That's it's interesting. I just want to bring this up. We got a lot of action here in the comments, but as a registered dietitian, I just want to bring out the facts here, and a journalist. 90%, I will just use America as an example, the USA, are not meeting their fiber recommendations. And interesting to note that men are actually doing a little worse than women. Sorry. And, they're saying between 25 grams a day for women, 38 for men, which is, and Matt earlier said, well, that's nowhere near enough. But if we can just get people to do 20 to 25 grams a day, that's a good start. And registered dietitian here on the panel, to do it slowly. You cannot go from 0 to 60. And too much fiber, like this Fibermaxxing, I'm just going to, my 2 cents right here, it can tick off digestive discomfort, bloating, gas. We know these things. And even nutrient deficiencies, because the phytates, the oxalates in the fiber itself can actually block the absorption of certain minerals like iron and calcium and copper. So again, our tendency, I think, as human beings is, how low can you go when you're supposed to go low, or how high can you go when you're supposed to go high? This is where, again, the GPS. Now, a lot of the questions on the commentary here, Matt, and it just seems like your products are a good application, but a lot popping in the soda pop world right now. I mean, we've got Olipop, you mentioned Pepsi Crisp, but of course, Coke's in the game. And it was interesting about Olipop because they just introduced their shelf stable and were picked up by Costco nationwide. And you're not often picked up with every region of Costco, but they were. And it was explained to me by the dietitian who works there that they actually reformulated for the shelf stable one and lowered the fiber. They lowered the fiber because they felt that they didn't want to have people over consuming the fiber. And, they went from, I guess, in the refrigerated one, had 9 grams of fiber a can. The shelf stable is 6 grams of fiber per can. Pepsi has 3 grams of probiotic fiber, but lower sugar. That's another thing we're looking for, right? The lower sugar. And Poppy has 1 more gram of probiotic fiber than Pepsi. That's also owned by Pepsi. And Coke has one, Simply Pop, that they're bringing in there. So a lot popping in the soda pop arena there, Matt.
A lot happening. Yeah. So the great news is that all of these things bring awareness to the fact that just the widespread metabolic dysregulation that's driving the need for semaglutides and other things is due to a severe fiber deficiency in the modern diet. And so I love it that Pepsi released that beverage and everything else that's happening that you mentioned, because that awareness is key. It's like Noosheen was saying, awareness is key, right? It's like one of the things that modern marketing does. I mean, its value is the awareness it drives. Now, that said, the fibers that are available in the industrial food chain, in other words, the stuff that makes it into the grocery store, there are only a handful of them. And there are thousands of fibers in the natural world, right? So there's a severe lack of diversity of fibers in the grocery store. There's a further problem, which is that the 2 primary ones, inulin and phos, they are inflammatory, right? So that's why people have in their minds that there's a such thing as too much fiber or it's going to cause you gut distress, is because inulin and phos cause gut distress. They produce a lot of gas, and they produce a lot of gut distress and bloating and things like that. And so, and the effects are cumulative. And sodas, like some of the ones you mentioned, use inulin, which is not shelf stable, by the way, or it's not temperature and pH stable. And so inulin and phos have that severe weakness, which is that they're inflammatory and the effects are cumulative. Then there's a whole other class that's cheap, and they get to call them fiber, but they are synthetic fibers. This is corn, wheat, the dextrins, cassava, right, which is started to be used by one of those brands you mentioned. These are synthetic fibers, and they're not going to provide the function because the microbiome doesn't really know what to do with them. They're like, oh, that's synthetic. I don't eat that. And so it doesn't provide the metabolic regulation that actual natural fiber does. And then the third class of fibers. So remember, first one's inflammatory, second one's synthetic and non-functional. The third class is just gross, right? And so and those aren't typically in the grocery store. You're not going to find psyllium husk in your Pepsi because you wouldn't drink that. So Pepsi wouldn't try to sell it to you. And so what we do is enable any fiber, the full diversity of the natural world to come into the grocery store, but to do it in a non-functional, in a highly functional, anti-inflammatory way, and without affecting the user experience, right? There's no psyllium husk effect where you've got this brown, thick sludge that's a choking hazard, as it lists on the package.
Yeah. Even chia seeds will do that too if you're not careful.
Yeah. So we break it down so that you can't see it with your eye, you can't feel it in your mouth, you can't taste it, because we break it down still in its natural form, but into shorter segments that for the first time ever make these things just dissolve.
Why would these companies be using things that don't work? Or don't they have their own R&D people? Don't they have their own nutrition and food science people?
It's hard. It's hard. Like if I can brag on behalf of the One.Bio team, they have cracked something that people have been trying for decades to do. Some of the biggest companies globally in food and beverage have invested literally hundreds of millions of dollars to try to crack this problem, and no one's been able to. So, I mean, in Pepsi's defense, they're using what's available to them. And so, it's kind of the best available. They can call it fiber because the FDA allows them to, but it won't provide the function. So they're doing what's available, and they don't want to use a whole lot of inulin because that causes people distress. But we're working to give them better options, essentially.
And is it like anything else with personalized nutrition that one fiber or set of fibers might work better? Because everybody's gut might be a little bit different. We know that our microbiome is like a fingerprint. And Noosheen, I know this is your world too, like a fingerprint. And you could certainly improve your microbiome over time. You can certainly destroy it over time. And Matt, I know that you work with the Sonnenbergs with your company there. And I'll never forget the slide that Dr. Sonnenberg showed me, and it was like, the villi that are the kind of the lawn, if you will, of our intestinal tract. And after the microbiome essentially had been destroyed, it looked like somebody had just cut the lawn. I mean, that was such a visual that we could get the lawn to grow back. And Noosheen, I know you put a lot of good info here in the chat. But before we forget, Carlos had a question about how is it what you're doing different from the Metamucils of the world, and then we'll get back to you, Matt and Chris, on that if you want to. But Noosheen, you wanted to say something about microbiome?
Yeah, I wanted to follow up and on what Matt was doing. That what was saying. Basically, we've put tremendous amount of research energy behind probiotics over the last 2 decades, but not enough on prebiotics. So what the kind of work that Matt's doing and the kind of work that's been done in some research centers like David's, et cetera, is really extraordinary because the industry just hasn't done that. And he was saying Pepsi is not, people like Pepsi don't have the information to use because the research doesn't exist. So I want to agree with him that research doesn't exist. But I want to tell you that my experience working with 20 different food companies is that they pay a ton of lip service to wanting to have good fiber in their product, to make their products healthy for people, whether it's blood sugar or adding fiber, etc. At the end of the day, they don't want to do it. Their formula is cheap food that's delicious. They are not concerned about making people healthier. And this has been my experience working with some of the best companies in the world. And one very famous soda company, I will not name, said to us, "Hey, I look at this very, very successful Olipop. Can you give me some polyphenol or something I can throw into my existing, soda that would, compete with it?" It's just the whole mentality is so different. Like Olipop is such a different product. It's not soda with some polyphenols. It's entirely different. I don't see that radical mentality in the entire food system. And I've now talked to very closely to at least 20 food companies. So I think overall, I'm not unless there is a huge effort, much like the anti-smoking effort in the country, which involves lots of groups, private sector, government, nonprofits, that get together and actually sue these companies to change. None of them voluntarily are going to change their ways. They're going to keep saying we want to make healthy foods, and they'll keep making what they're making. And occasionally they'll make modifications as they go.
Okay, so are we fortifying the food and beverage supply with fiber? Is this the food future?
I hope so.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Let's start today. Yeah.
Now, obviously,
Yeah, and I see everything. Sorry.
No. Go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
I see everything that Noosheen sees. The thing that I'll add is that these large food and beverage companies, I mean, frankly, they just don't have a good option available to them right now. I mean, regardless of who wants what and what they will do and won't do, they don't have a good option. You know, they have inflammatory fibers, like I said, like inulin and phos. They have synthetic ones, which won't do much for a person. And then they have the ones that are gross, and they're definitely not going to put those in their products. And so right now, you know, One.Bio is commercializing here around the turn of the year. So we'll provide them a better option. But, you know, right now they don't have a good option.
Yeah, and it fundamentally comes down to price. You know, F&B companies are operating on the margin, and inulin, for argumentative purposes, has been around the longest. So it has reached the economies of scale in the supply chain, and therefore the price has been pushed down globally. Yes, not all fibers are created equal. You know, some fibers ferment over maybe 4 to 5 hours, such as, you know, the case with the inulin. And that's been the motivation for us to create what we consider are sort of a complex set of fibers we derive from this hemicellulose fraction. So we can get fermentation times up to 20 hours, 24 hours. So we meet that digestion cycle of the gender, be it a male or a female. And can we do that at a cost which is the same as inulin? Yes, if we do it on site. So if we do this on site, we can potentially 4 to 5x the value of the feed in terms of this extraction of fiber that we're producing. And we can manufacture it at a cost that's 4 to 5 times less than inulin. So yeah, there are ways that we're working, and Matt is working with this, and I'm working with this, to get these more complex, efficacious fibers to market in more intelligent ways. And the reason why we've adopted the deconstruction, reconstruction model of on-site upcycling and fortification is to get these extracts into products, expedite the introduction as well. Because if I extract a fiber that's novel and bring it into the ingredient supply chain, all of a sudden I have to go through what is considered quite a rigorous regulatory process, whether it's, you know, GRAS, no objection, or whether self-affirmation is around in the future. That, you know, that question mark exists as well. But if I can reconstitute these fractions into products on site, then I'm leveraging this deconstruction, reconstruction model and getting these low-cost, complex, soluble fiber matrices, including the proteins and the antioxidants, into products today. This is the goal. Yeah. So we have to be able to provide alternatives to the PepsiCos and the Cokes and these other F&B CPG companies, that there are alternatives to inulin and phos on the margin that are equally costly or less costly even, and will provide a benefit for the host. And more fermented.
And look, this is where the food science, the evolution of food science, and coming up with ingredients that are perfected or essentially best suited for the application. Mike Wolf put something in here, which I actually had notes on too. I mentioned the word fortification. You know, we added iodine to salt to prevent goiter, fluoride, of course, in water for dental health. You know, vitamin D in dairy products, vitamin D in fats and oils. I've got one for you. It might blow your mind. And it didn't work out, and it did happen to happen at the Coca-Cola company. You know, the soda Tab, remember Tab, which was before Diet Coke? Well, it came out in 1963. And then in the 1980s, one of the big health concerns was osteoporosis. And women in general, and women was kind of a key audience for Tab, were not getting enough calcium. So they introduced tab with calcium.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, look, yeah. If you look 100 years ago, Carolyn, this is no different. People didn't know that there were these distinct vitamins and minerals out there that had distinct function in the body. But then a handful of scientists did their work, Casimir Funk and a few others, in the 20s and 30s, maybe the teens too. World War II happened, and right after that, these vitamins and minerals started to be re-included, fortified, if you will, enriched with these vitamins and minerals. And we went from vitamin and mineral deficiencies being rampant across the population to there being a very, very few. And so this is where, to me, it's like you take something like oats, which are very metabolically healthy and good for a person, uncontroversially so. And then you make oat milk and you take all their metabolic health away because there's no fiber in there. And so, it's to your question, to Michael's question, I say absolutely. We need to fortify it, enrich it,
but
get it back in there.
Right place for the right fortification, I say, because tab with calcium ended up not being such a great product, but it just showed you again where the big companies are like, oh, I see a problem. Oh, I see how we can fix it. I see how we can get more customers. And did you know where the name tab came from?
No.
Kind of fun, because it was for weight control. So it was to help you keep tabs on your weight.
No, check it out. All right.
Anyway, Noosheen, you had obviously a good comment.
I just wanted to go back to GLP-1s and say, if you're not on GLP-1s, please consider increasing your fiber dramatically, fiber and protein, reduce your other macros, and you will get incredible benefits from that if you're not on GLP-1s. Because you will increase satiety, it will be very, very good for weight loss. If you are on GLP-1s, still critically important to keep good protein and fiber habit to make sure that you are maintaining muscle mass with protein, and to build that habit so that you can offboard a GLP-1. A lot of people are not able to offboard GLP-1s because they don't have a great fiber habit. And they don't, they go off GLP-1s and then they tell me, my God, all I can think of is food. I can't stop eating. My appetite is back and I can't control it. Well, use fiber. Try it. It's a huge intervention. It's like, give it a real try and treat it as your natural GLP-1. Pick it up and see what happens. But also try it if you are on a GLP-1, because building that habit is all about longevity, is about habits. It's not about hacking, one time do this, one time do that, throw on this sensor. Longevity is about good habits every single day of your life. And that's why building this habit will let you offboard a GLP-1, because we know that, we don't want to stay on GLP-1s for the rest of your lives if you don't need to. So I think it's really important. And using a product like a January AI app keeps you accountable in terms of having the right macro balance. And you can, decide you want to be more vegetable forward, to have more fiber in your diet. You can go for a specific number. Like, I want to have at least 20, we want to have 21 to 25 grams of fiber for women, probably 30 to 38 grams of fiber for men. And like what we all said, we are dramatically lower than that. The average American is getting 10 to 15 grams of fiber compared to what our ancestors got, which was 100 to 150 grams of fiber a day. That's why we're in dysbiosis. That's why we are so messed up. That's why our collective gut, that and use of antibiotics, it has really destroyed our gut. So to rebuild our collective gut, let's add fiber to everything.
Okay, we're fiber friendly, we're fiber forward, and we're future forward, and with the future in mind, food labels. And if there's a downside of Fibermaxxing, people need to know how much fiber is in everything, right? So let's talk about labeling. What are we going to do?
Oh, I have some ideas. So look, I would say, let's start labeling the sugar to fiber ratio. Because again, in nature, other than like a watermelon or honey, you're not going to find greater than 4-to-1 sugar to fiber ratio, and usually it's under 2-to-1. And Noosheen can tell you it's even often under 1-to-1. And so we need to show that, and I would say regulate that. I mean, like, look, a traditional soda has about 40 grams of sugar in the can and 0 grams of fiber. Do you know what else has 40 grams of sugar? 2 apples. They also have 9 grams of fiber, right? So
Well, can I
like
just
the
have
sugar,
that can of soda with the apples?
yes, yeah, sugar is not the enemy. Fiberless sugar is, and that's where we'd like to change the conversation around. Hey, it's not processed sugar; it's fiberless sugar. And let's talk about the sugar to fiber ratio, and let's start regulating that and putting that on the label, because that's what it's all about. And by the way, starch is a sugar.
Okay, and I think a lot of times people just look at foods, they're not looking at recipes. Looking at ingredients, they're not looking at meals. They're looking at meals, they're not looking at meal patterns. And so I know this is more complex, but that's how you balance things out. Now you mentioned like the orange juice or whatever. Yeah, sure, it's gonna spike here, but you're not supposed to have it alone. Have it with your scrambled eggs or your whatever your toast with cheese sandwich with it. I went in my closet to find out how much fiber was just in like snacks here. And here's a little, because pistachios, of course, are terrific. And this package, which is a serving, has, this is just kind of a fun little Jeopardy thing here. 2 grams, only 2 grams of fiber right there. Okay, then we had the almonds, same little snack pack, 2 grams. Then another favorite, my peanut butter crackers that I travel with, because, there's peanut butter with the protein. Less than 1 gram of fiber. Okay. Then a new product, which I think I picked up at the Google Food Lab. And I'm like, oh, let's see how these better for you candies, how are they doing? Or not really candies, but little sweet things, sour. 15 grams of fiber. 15. And I said, holy mackerel. Oh my gosh, that's a shockaroonie. And I know we need more than 15 a day, but still, I'm concerned that we don't want to have to just load fiber into everything. Discuss.
What kind of snacks are you eating, girl?
No, these are just in my closet. I'm not.
My God, I travel with literally with a box of vegetables. I eat a box of vegetables every single day. I carry them in my purse to Saudi Arabia, to Europe, to New York. If I go away for 10 days, I take 10 boxes of fiber.
Well, this is the beauty of it. This is why Baskin Robbins makes 31 flavors. It's something different for everybody here, something different for everybody. But can we have too much and, of it going into everything?
Well, it comes again to the point that Matt made earlier. Is the fiber going to cause discomfort because it ferments too quickly? Can we produce fibers that are more complex, more substituted, that ferment over longer periods of time? Can we overdose in taking those types of fibers? That's a key question as well. But if we are going to do fibermaxxing, we might as well utilize fibers that are more complex, more diverse, and ferment over a longer period of time. This is my recommendation. Are we going to fibermax on inulin? Probably is not a good idea, especially if you're not accustomed to consuming larger amounts of fiber. It will create discomfort. And that's why we're focusing, in our case, on these complex fibers that can be reconstituted into products. And on that nutritional label, it'll say, if we get up to a high source of fiber, i.e. 6 grams per 100, it would not say 95% of that is soluble and bioavailable. So for the consumer, it'll say dietary fiber, but we will know that is a complex, highly bioavailable fiber that's reconstituted into that product.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I totally agree with some of what Kristofer's saying. And one thing that I'll add, though, that's a little bit different, because the One.Bio team has been able to drive some understanding of some things with our understanding of fiber structure, is that all fiber is not created equal. And so while like in inulin, for example, you definitely want to be careful about how much of that fiber you consume. Someone, like we've done this, a person who has a lot of problems, like severe, like it ruins a day of their life, to have 3 grams of inulin, we can give them 20 grams of our oat and barley fiber, no problem. And that's, by the way, someone with IBD, right? So the fiber source matters. Is it inflammatory or non-inflammatory? Does it cause gas or does it drive acid production? What does it do? And so all fiber is not created equal. And the one of the key problems here is that the modern world and the processed diet that accounts for 70% of the calories that we eat is not designed for how we evolved. Like our ancestors had these really strong musculoskeletal structures in their jaw because they ate 100 to 150 grams of fiber a day. but oh my God, who has time to eat 10 cups of nuts, right? Like that's not a thing, or, or 12 avocados or something. Like it's a lot. And so I would argue that, A, it's the type of fiber, but B, absolutely we should start enriching everything, because like getting enough is like we're a long way away from getting too much. And we're not sure there is a such thing as too much, but also the satiety signal itself comes from the fermentation of fiber, right? So it's pretty hard to eat too much if you're eating enough fibers.
So it'd be self-limiting in a way.
Yes, absolutely it would. So like it's all built in. It's the way we're designed to work.
And Chris said something initially, which you talked about complexity of the fibers and diversity, but how that is so associated with efficacy. It's like you have that complexity, you have the diversity, and that really, end of the day, is the quality. Matt just said all fiber is not created equal. We know that every microbiome is different. People are different. The application of those fibers, if we're adding them, fortifying them, whether it's in a soft drink, or maybe it's in a cereal product, whatever, where it already had some fiber, but you're adding more. So there's a lot of different applications, but a lot to keep our eyes on the prize here in food future. And as you know, we're just so new to the game, and the research on GLP-1s, and how not beyond the, folks, of course, with obesity and diabetes, and 1 in 8 people are on the GLP-1 drug. I just checked into that today. And maybe for some it is like a blood pressure medication. You don't go, your blood pressure is not under control. Like, oh, I'm going to get off my medication. No, you got to stay on that. So maybe for some individuals it is something, because just the way they're made, they need to have the medical management with a GLP-1 drug, and maybe others don't, and they could eat more fiber. So that is, I guess, in our GPS journey here together. Final word, as we wrap up the panel for Smart Kitchen Summit. Chris, we'll start with you so that you can get some rest over there in Sweden. What is your hope for people's knowledge, the consumer's knowledge of the importance of fiber in their overall health?
Well, obviously, based upon today's conversation, my hope is that consumers begin to recognize that just increasing the quantity of fiber consumption is important. On the other side, my hope is that the CPG companies in the F&B space take it upon themselves to start exploring other products. The sodas can be the starting point, but there's a plethora of other products out there that can be fortified. And I think Matt would endorse this as well, most certainly, that yeah, we have the channel of the fresh foods, and we have the AI tools that Noosheen isn't endorsing. We have the nutraceutical, the functional proof products out there. The evolution of the poppies and the olipopps. But become creative. Look at any product out there and say, can we make this product better by fortifying it with a high quality fiber? And then begin to explore. Get samples and do formulation work and see how the products behave. Start doing in vitro testing and then in vivo testing, and see how that bifidogenic effect is amplified by using these products, and how we boost, for example, the natural GLP-1 secretion mechanisms. And yeah, they could be complementary to the utilization of the GLP-1 agonist drugs. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to, are the CPG companies willing to explore this area and make their products healthier? And Noosheen said earlier that maybe they're not interested. My hope is that those companies are really interested and want to pursue this, because they see it's not only the trend, but they can also gain a competitive advantage by undertaking a fortification of their products and making them healthier.
So Matt, what about you? What are your hopes and dreams as we move through 2025 into 26 for the consumer's knowledge about the value of fiber in their overall health?
Yeah, we're already seeing a lot of action happen, from articles in Vogue to the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg and studies coming out of Harvard and Stanford and other places. So there's a lot of awareness happening. It's starting to have a bit of a moment here the last year or two. And people are even though when you poll, people don't really know what prebiotic means, they're starting to understand, oh, it's something I should probably pay attention to. And same with fiber, oh, it's something I should pay attention to. And so the awareness is growing. It takes time. This is just about giving people better options, because at the end of the day, when we go to the store, we solve for pleasure and convenience. And if we can also solve for health, we do that. But when there's a trade-off, we tend to solve for pleasure, convenience. And so what we at One.Bio are doing is working to collapse that tension and that trade-off so that you can have all of it. And so from an awareness perspective, we think things are going in a pretty good place. We would love for labeling to be in a different place, at the federal level. But for the most part, I mean, that Poppy got bought for $2 billion. That Olipop was valued at 1.85. That Pepsi has released a prebiotic soda. This is the tip of the iceberg, right? Because those sodas make a promise that people are desperate for. So the awareness is there, but they don't deliver on that promise because these aren't functional fibers. They're either inflammatory or non-functional. And so like when that promise starts getting delivered on, I have no doubt that this market will break open.
So the conversation has begun. We need to fine tune that conversation and
deliver on the promise.
And deliver on the promise. And let's face it, there's only one way to go but up in the fiber intake and probiotic and prebiotic intake. And Noosheen, what are your hopes again for self-monitoring and January AI and helping people understand the significance of fiber in their diet? And we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, it's actually simpler than you think. It sounds overwhelming, like, oh, what will I do? Well, scan a few, take a few pictures. Jan figures out what your diet is. It can make recommendations for types of fibers you can eat or types of fibers you're already consuming, that you're used to consuming. It can also translate things into, 1 cup of raspberries has 7 grams of fiber. That's the best fruit you can have. And so it's really easier than you think. Give AI a try. It's incredibly easy. And we now are taking your blood tests, and you can just upload your labs. And we soon by September, you'll be able to upload anything. Upload your DEXA scan or your Prenuvo scan or whatever you want. And then we can connect all of these into precision nutrition solution for you that will include, I promise you, always high fiber.
That's great. And to leave with one more example from the Noosphere, or whatever word that is, Jenny's ice cream. Jenny Britton, of course, that brought the world, that still serves the world some delicious ice cream, has introduced her beautiful Flora Fruit Crush Bar, a snack bar designed for digestive health, made with crushed trimmings from produce such as apple cores and watermelon rinds. And it's the most concentrated fiber bar out there. I'm just reading this. But anyway, then she's really going strong on the flavors. Because, she did have an ice cream company. So the flavors are like raspberry rose, blueberry matcha, and of course the sustainability. So Matt, to your point, we're going to hear a lot more products and companies getting into the prebiotic, probiotic, fiber conversation. And I think our fiber future might be shaping up to be looking pretty good and tasting good too. So thank you very much, all of you, for a really active panel. We got a long way to go. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Good to see you
Thanks,
all.
everyone.